been looking for you.
Yes, Mother?
You should have been with me welcoming the guests. They'll be down presently.
Well, then I can welcome them in here.
Is that a letter?
Yes, it's nothing important.
Doris, this house party is going to be simply sensational. Mr. and Mrs. Bates said they wouldn't have missed it for the world. And Carl Emerson said he'd been looking forward to this weekend for days. Why, even Vicki Wayne is here. Frankly, dear, I didn't think she would come.
I wish none of them had come.
Why, darling, what a way to talk. You should see what the morning paper has to say about the party.
Oh, Mother, you didn't notify the press, did you?
Well, certainly I did. And we're written up in the chit-chat column of the society page. Listen to this. Mrs. Agnes Harwood, niece of the late Albert Stillwell, will entertain with a house party this weekend at the Stillwell Estate on Lake Forest Road. Mrs. Harwood and her daughter, Miss Doris Harwood, adieu, dear, arrived several months ago for a residence at the mansion. The estate had been unoccupied since the late owner's death a year ago. Mrs. Harwood's guests will include Miss Vicki Wayne, Mr. and Mrs. John Bates, Mr. Carl Emerson, and Mr. William Patterson Bond. And what do you think of that?
I think that other than Vicki Wayne, those people don't rate mention in the society column.
But, darling, we do. Uncle Albert was always very prominent in this community, so it's only natural that his only relatives would be newsworthy.
Mother, what would people think if they knew the truth? That we're almost broke and we're trying to find a buyer for this place because we're skating on thin ice financially.
Shh, darling. Do you want someone to hear you? Of course I must sell this place. And the people I have invited down here are the most likely prospects. That's why I invited Mr. Bond down, too. He's a good real estate agent, and I have a feeling he can close a deal before the weekend is through.
You always told me that Uncle Albert was a wealthy man, but when he died, all he left us was this old pile of stone, one ugly statue, and all of these gloomy furnishings.
Well, I did think he had more than this. But his business seems to have been terribly involved. And of course, I never understood much about his affairs. Well, at least we can get rid of this house.
Mother, I don't want you to sell this place.
Doris, what on earth is the matter with you?
I don't want you to let Mr. Bond talk anyone into a deal this weekend.
Why, I never heard of such a thing. I'm getting rid of this place the moment I find a buyer.
Oh, but Mother, you can't do that.
What do you want me to do? Open a museum in the house and pasture cows on the front lawn?
Well, of course not.
But still, well, after all, we have to eat. And I certainly don't intend to nibble on these old books and tapestries. This ugly statue.
I wish we'd never come here.
I know what's the matter with you. You're still in love with that Neil Parker. That's why you didn't want to leave the West Coast in the first place.
Neil Parker has nothing to do with this.
And from now on, you will have nothing to do with Neil Parker. Thank goodness you two are thousands of miles apart. And I'm sure Neil could never raise enough money to get out of the Los Angeles city limits.
Neil is a success, Mother, and you know it.
How could anyone who writes detective stories be a success? Don't think I'm going to let you marry a man who thinks up murders for a living. Why, I'd as soon be married to a gangster.
Neil doesn't want to marry you, Mother.
No, but if he married you, I'm sure he'd work up some perfectly ghastly plan to get rid of his mother-in-law. And I refuse to take chances.
Oh, Mother, all of this has nothing to do with selling the estate.
Doris, this house still belongs to me, and I'm getting rid of it at the first opportunity.
Oh, but Mother...
After all, I'm a practical businesswoman. Didn't your dear father always let me handle all his affairs?
Oh, yes, Mother, and what did we end up with? 400 shares of stock in an invention that was supposed to make automobiles run on water.
Well, anyway, it was a beautiful idea. And the salesman had such a delightful smile. I'll never forget him.
Oh, here you are.
Oh, Mr. Emerson, come in.
Good morning, Doris.
Hello, Carl.
Mr. Emerson, is your room satisfactory?
Perfect. In fact, I'm quite taken up by this place.
Oh, I was just telling Doris that if the house wasn't so large, I'd live here the rest of my life. But it's foolish for a woman alone to keep an estate, don't you think?
Exactly, Mrs. Harwood. But frankly, I wouldn't mind owning this place.
Carl, what would you do with it?
Get rid of the statue. And then I'd make it into a summer hotel. The location's excellent. that sort of thing.
Oh, yes, a lake and trees. And there's so much sky overhead.
Well, Carl, I thought you were an up-and-coming bond salesman. What would you want with the summer hotel?
Oh, well, I'm a bond salesman, that's true, but I'm not so sure about the up-and-coming part of it.
Oh, everyone says you're going to be a marvelous success, Mr. Emerson. And every successful man should keep an estate, don't you think?
You mean you'd actually consider selling, Mrs. Harwood?
Oh, I might. I just might, you understand. Dear Uncle Albert, rest his soul, wouldn't want me to carry on here. I'm certain of that.
And I'm not so certain.
What do you mean?
She doesn't mean anything, Mr. Emerson. Have you met our other guests?
No, although from my window I saw a man and a woman walking along the terrace a few moments ago.
Oh, that would have been John and Susan Bates. They're just lovely people, and I would like you to know them. Susan is, well, the retiring type, but a lovely personality once you really understand her.
Indeed.
And then there is Vicky Wayne.
Vicky Wayne?
Oh, yes, her parents are very prominent in society. I had asked them all down for the weekend, but her mother and father were called out of the city, so Miss Wayne accepted in their stead.
You mean Vicky Wayne is going to be in this house?
Oh, she arrived just before you did. You know, I had never met her before, although her mother and I had attended several teas together. She seems to be a lovely girl. I'm sure you'll like her.
Well, why?
Is something the matter, Mr. Emerson?
No. No, nothing's wrong.
Well, come, we must find John and Susan. We can reach the terrace through the drawing room.
Oh, are you coming, Doris?
I know. Doris will join us later.
Miss Doris!
What?
There's someone here to see you. It's a man.
A man?
Yes, he came to the back door. He said I wasn't to tell you till you were alone.
Well, where is he now?
He's in the kitchen.
Neil. Neil Parker.
Oh, he isn't in the kitchen. He's here. Would you like to see him, Miss Doris?
Neil.
Well, I guess you do.
Hello, Doris.
Neil.
Surprised?
No, I've never been so happy to see anyone.
That goes double for me.
What are you doing here?
You didn't think I could stay away forever, did you? Los Angeles has been an empty desert since you left.
When did you arrive?
Just a few minutes ago, and as soon as I located the address of the Stillwell estate, I grabbed a taxi, and here I am.
Oh, then Mother hasn't seen you.
I should say now, I snuck in the back door and bribed her maid to keep quiet. Left my bags in the kitchen.
Well, Mother's going to be furious, Neil.
I'd rather expect it.
Oh, but you don't understand. She's entertaining this weekend with a house party.
Which makes matters more complicated, I suppose.
Yes, but I am glad you've come. I need you, Neil.
Is anything the matter?
Yes. There's something that I have to tell you now, before Mother finds that you're here.
Are you in trouble?
Oh, I don't know, Neil, but you've got to help me.
Of course, darling. You sound like the heroine of one of my detective stories.
Oh, Neil, this is terribly upsetting. And mysterious.
Well, mysteries are right down my alley.
You know why Mother and I came here, don't you?
Why, yes, your great uncle Albert Stillwell
Yes.
died, leaving the estate to your mother. She was expecting a large inheritance and was openly disappointed when only the house and grounds remained. Is that right?
Yes.
So in an attempt to make the best of the situation, she moved out here with the intent of selling the place. You packed up your bags and left a lonely and broken-hearted detective story writer all alone on the West Coast.
Would you like to sit down?
Thank you.
During the last few months, Mother's made a number of contacts. She found several people who seemed interested in the mansion, so she's invited them here for the weekend. She's even included her real estate agent.
Which all sounds entirely reasonable.
Mother has invited 4 people, in addition to Mr. Vaughn, the agent. One of them must have done it.
Done what?
Sent me this letter. It came by special delivery half an hour ago.
Disturbing news?
Listen. Dear Miss Harwood, don't sell the old mansion. You will regret it. Take any steps to keep your mother from disposing of the estate, and it's signed Albert Stillwell.
Albert Stillwell, but he's dead.
Of course.
Oh, come now, you don't believe in ghosts, do you?
Neil, you know I don't, but why would you celebrate with me, and by whom?
Say, this is interesting. I'm just trying to frighten you.
But who would care whether we disposed of the estate or not? Unless there's something we don't know.
Has your mother seen that?
Oh, no. I tried to make her feel that she wouldn't sell the estate, not just now anyway, but she wouldn't even listen to me.
Who are the guests?
Well, there's Carl Emerson, a bond salesman, and Mr. and Mrs. Bates, who've entertained Mother and me several times, and Vicki Wayne, the daughter of a wealthy business executive.
And they've all shown interest in the estate?
Directly or indirectly, Mr. Bates is the only one who's actually spoken with Mother about buying. I think Carl Emerson and Vicki Wayne's parents are doubtful prospects.
Are Miss Wayne's parents here?
No, actually, they had other plans for the weekend. I don't understand why Vicki came. Mother and I have never even met the girl.
Well, perhaps her parents have better prospects than you think.
Well, Neil, I don't know what to think. This letter has really frightened me.
Supposing I do a bit of investigating this weekend.
Which means you'll stay?
Of course I don't want to see them.
Neil, I think I feel better already.
Just leave everything to me. Maybe I can even get a good story out of this.
Always thinking in terms of your work, aren't you?
Why not if I'm going to marry the sweetest girl in the world?
Are you?
In spite of her mother.
I'll tell Ella to take your bags upstairs. And if Mother walks in...
She and I will have a pleasant little family chat.
Good evening.
Oh, hello.
Are you one of Mrs. Harwood's guests?
Yes, an unexpected one. I'm Neil Parker.
Glad to meet you, Mr. Parker. My name's Bates, John Bates, and this is my wife.
It's a pleasure, Mrs. Bates.
Oh, thank you. We've been on the terrace with Mrs. Harwood and Mr. Emerson, but John insisted that we come inside. And it was so beautiful out there in the moonlight.
You must think of your throat, Susan dear.
Yes, John.
Do you live around here, Mr. Parker?
No, I live in Los Angeles.
Oh, indeed.
I'm sure Agnes will be overjoyed when she learns you've arrived for a visit.
Well, I wouldn't quite say that.
Oh. Shall I call her?
Susan, never mind.
That won't be necessary, Mrs. Bates. I've already spoken with Doris.
A fine girl, by the way. You know her well?
Quite well.
I suspected as much. I imagine she was delighted to see you.
What a lovely party this is going to be. You haven't met the other guests yet, Mr. Parker?
No, although I am looking forward to that. Say, this is an interesting old house, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a most interesting house. You know, I've had my eye on this place for quite some time.
Yes. John said he always wanted to buy this place, but even when he was the assistant manager of the Avenue Joy shop.
Susan!
I'm sorry, John.
Oh, Susan still insists on discussing our early days. Frankly, I prefer not to remember those lean years.
No, I suppose not.
Well, Mrs. Harwood is desirous of selling this place.
So Doris tells me.
Yes, I've had my eye on this place for quite some time.
I would think this would be a rather large house for just you and Mrs. Bates.
Yeah, we'd have to hire a staff of servants. You know, I can't see how Mrs. Harwood manages. Why, she only has one maid, I believe.
Oh, but Agnes says she doesn't like a lot of help around her. She says she prefers to do things herself. Well, I've always done my own work.
Susan!
I'm sorry, John.
Oh, Susan, what she really means is that in our early years of our marriage, why we had to watch every penny. But that was years ago.
Hello, Mrs. Harwood.
Neil! Neil Parker!
Rather a surprise, isn't it?
Why, yes. Yes, it is.
Oh, Mr. Parker said you weren't expecting him, Agnes. I told him you'd be overjoyed.
Yes, of course. When did you arrive, Neil?
Just a few minutes ago, and Doris was gracious enough to ask me to stay the weekend. She assured me you'd be delighted.
We'd love to have you. You've met John and Susan?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, we've had a pleasant little visit.
Susan, wouldn't you like to join Mr. Emerson? He's in the drawing room, viewing Uncle Albert's collection of paintings.
Oh, but Agnes, John and I have already seen them.
Oh, but I'm sure you'll want to see them again. You really can't enjoy a picture until you've seen it hundreds of times.
Come, Susan.
But John, We'll see you later, Mr. Parker.
Undoubtedly, Mrs. Bates.
Well,
Trust this hasn't upset you, Mrs. Harwood.
if you've come to see my daughter,
Which I have and which I did.
you know perfectly well I don't approve of you.
You mean you don't approve of my work?
Well, writing detective stories is hardly my idea of an honorable living. Supposing that was all any man did in this country.
Well, the competition would be rather discouraging.
All you think about is crime, and then you want to marry my daughter.
Oh, come now, Mrs. Harwood. I'm not as bad as all that. You've never tried to know me.
I don't want to know you. I'd probably wake up some morning and find I've been murdered in my bed. Neil, I must ask you to leave at once.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Harwood, but I'm staying.
Why, of all the nerve, I'll have you put out.
Oh, you wouldn't do that. Not with a house full of guests. Think of the embarrassing explanations.
You can't do this to me. I'm the mistress of this estate.
I'm not so certain about that. Come now, let's be friends, shan't we? I assure you I'll be on my best behavior.
You would show up today, of all days.
I think it was fortunate that I did.
I can't imagine why.
Well, perhaps before the weekend's over, we'll all be a bit wiser.
I couldn't possibly be any wiser than I am at this moment.
What a pity.
I don't like the way you said that.
Oh, Mother, you've seen Leo.
I regret to say I'm looking at him at this very moment.
But your mother was gracious enough to permit me to stay, Doris.
If it weren't for creating a most embarrassing situation, I would exert my authority.
Well, the guests will enjoy Neil's company, Mother.
You remember this, Neil Parker. If I catch you trying to charm my daughter, I'll
Well?
send a protest to the president.
Mrs. Harwood? Yes, Ella. And Mr. William Patterson Bond has arrived. He asked me to announce him.
Show him in.
Thank you.
Ah, Mrs. Harwood.
Oh, so glad you could come, Mr. Vaughn.
The Barn Rapid Move Realty Company is always at your service, madam. Oh, while searching for a place to set down roots, I slipped in the mud and broke my foot. And Miss Harwood, it's delightful to see you again.
Mr. Vaughn, I'd like you to meet Mr. Parker, another guest.
Oh, Mr. Parker, this is indeed an honor. Here, have a card. If finest farms or homes you crave, Vaughn will show 'em, you will rave.
Mr. Vaughn, where are your bags?
I left them in the hall.
Ella, would you take Mr. Vaughn's luggage upstairs?
Yes.
You looking for a house, Mr. Parker?
No.
Oh, sad, sad. Are you married?
Not yet.
Ah, but you will be soon. Well, I have just the place for you. It's a little honeymoon cottage with roses and morning glories and...
Never mind, Mr. Vaughn.
Can I show you to your room?
An excellent
You'll
idea.
excuse me, Mrs. Harwood?
With pleasure.
Isn't Mr. Parker one of your prospects?
He's nobody. Simply nobody.
Ah, but the other guests.
They have all arrived.
Well, I shall do my best to sell the house this weekend. When the deal is getting hot, Vaughn is always on the spot.
Well, Mr. Bates is definitely interested, but I have a feeling he hasn't much cash. And then there is Vicki Wayne. Do you know her, Mr. Vaughn?
No, I haven't had the pleasure.
Her mother had asked me once if I'd consider selling the estate. The Waynes are simply rolling in money.
Oh, well, I shall see Mrs. Wayne at once.
Oh, you can't. She isn't here. But I do want you to talk to her daughter.
Oh, well, I'm always delighted to talk to anyone's daughter.
And then there's a Mr. Emerson.
Mr. Emerson.
Carl Emerson. He sells, stocks and bonds and things. I can't imagine why he'd want this place, but that's no concern of mine. I think you should talk to him first.
Ah, yes. Whenever there's a likely sell, Vaughn is always on the trail.
Mr. Bates, this is my very good friend, Mr. Vaughn.
Indeed a pleasure.
And Mrs. Bates?
A rare privilege, madam.
Mr. Vaughn will be with us over the weekend.
Indeed I will. Have a card.
Well, thank you.
For home or farm or cozy nook, deal with Vaughn, he's no crook.
Has Miss Wayne come down yet? Oh, John and I haven't seen her.
If you'll all excuse me, I think I'll see what's keeping her. Goodness, maybe she can't find her way downstairs.
So you're a real estate agent, Mr. Vaughn.
Yes, the Vaughn Rapid Move Realty Company.
You're handling this estate, I suspect.
And who else but William Patterson Vaughn would be entrusted with such an important piece of property? By the way, have you seen a Mr. Emerson?
Oh, I believe he's in the drawing room.
Oh, my dear lady, your courteous answer is most appreciated. Ooh, well, if you'll excuse me, I will see the young man at once.
I hope Carl Emerson buys
Susan!
this place. I do, I tell you. You were a fool for coming here, John.
Susan!
It's a dangerous gamble. After all, you have no proof. I want to get out of here.
No, we're staying here, both of us. I'm going to go through it this way if I have to.
But John, that's what frightens me. You go to any extreme to learn the truth, and there's trouble ahead. I feel
Well, now, you listen to me. This is my little affair, and I'm going to go through with it. And if you make any attempts to foil my plans, why, I'll...
But John,
And you keep your mouth shut as to where I work. You understand? Is that clear?
John. Yeah, be of service.
Oh, no, young lady. Everything is fine.
If there's anything you need, just let me know. Mrs. Howard said I was to see the guests were comfortable.
Why, that's most thoughtful of Mrs. Howard. Come, Susan, dear.
Yes, John.
Benny!
Hello, baby.
Benny, you shouldn't have come in here.
Why not? Don't I do all of Mrs. Howard's repair work around here?
But Benny, this house is full of swell guests. Some of them are likely to walk in here any minute.
Oh, I'll just tell them I'm checking up on the old heating system.
They won't be needing any heating system around here, Mrs. Howard catches you. She'll burn up.
Mrs. Howard, that's all I ever hear from you.
Mrs. Howard is a fine lady, she is. Why didn't she give me this job?
Yeah, and that's what I don't like. Listen, Ella, are you gonna marry me?
Now, Benny.
I'm giving you one more chance to say yes.
And you're giving yourself one more chance to be refused.
You are the most obstinate female I ever ran across. I can't figure out why I'm in love with you.
You're a nice boy, Benny, but
I am not a boy. I'm a man. And I make enough money to support a wife, don't I? I've asked you 113 times to give up your job and marry me, and what answer do I always get?
You know good and well I want to be a career girl. This is my big chance to learn to be a super colossal maid. And I wouldn't turn it down to marry the Army and the Navy combined.
Ella, sometimes you make me so mad I feel like punching somebody in the nose.
I have a job, and I'm going to keep it. And don't you try to punch me, you big buffalo!
Listen, Ella, this here's a dangerous place.
What makes you say that?
Well, strange things happen around here. And if you don't get out, you're gonna be sorry. Why, if you ask me, I'll bet this place is even haunted.
You can't scare me.
I'm warning you, Ella.
Oh, for goodness sake, stop it. I was cut out to be a career girl, not a homebody, and I wish you'd quit bothering me.
Ella, sometimes you make me so mad.
Benny, somebody's coming.
Wait a minute.
Make it snappy, you big bun, before I forget I'm a refined lady.
Ow!
Thank you. Oh, what a charming room, Mrs. Harwood. Uncle Albert, you sit as a study, I believe. Do sit down. Thank you. The mansion is most impressive. You know, I am just delighted you could come. I have met your mother several times, but I've never had the pleasure of knowing you.
Mother regretted that she couldn't accept your invitation, but she and Father had planned a little trip over the weekend.
Well, I was delighted that you could be with us.
Yes, perhaps it was fortunate for all of us.
Have you met our other guests?
Most of them, I believe. You introduced me to Mr. and Mrs. Bates
Oh, such lovely people.
and a Mr. Vaughn.
He is the head of a large real estate company.
Yes, he gave me his card.
Such a refreshing personality, don't you think?
Well, at least unusual. And your daughter introduced me to, Mr. Parker?
Oh, he's just a friend. A passing friend. You'd hardly find him interesting.
I find all of your guests interesting, Mrs. Harwood.
Thank you. There are times that having guests in the house seems to be a trial, but Oh, Mr. Emerson, I'd like you to meet Miss Wayne, Miss Vicki Wayne.
Vicki Wayne? But I...
Ah, delighted, Mr. Emerson.
Have you two met before?
No. No, we haven't.
Of course not, but I am pleased to know you.
Are you?
Miss Wayne, would you care to see my Uncle Albert's collection of paintings? He kept them in the drawing room. They're some fine paintings.
By all means.
Would you care to join us, Mr. Emerson?
Yes. Yes, I would.
Well, Neil, what do you think of our guests?
It's a little bit early to draw any conclusions.
Do you think one of them wrote me that letter?
It's possible. Does anyone else know your mother intends to sell the estate?
Well, I'm not certain. A notice of the party appeared here in the morning section of the society column. But of course, no mention was made of Mother's reason of entertaining.
In the paper. Well, that's interesting.
We only knew more about these people. After all, they're only acquaintances.
I have an idea. Yes, it could prove to be an enlightening experiment.
What do you mean?
I don't have time to explain that, but remember, you must approve of everything I suggest.
Oh, Mr. Parker. A wonderful old house, isn't it?
Yes, yes, indeed.
I hope to thoroughly inspect this house before I leave.
Mr. Bates, did Mr. Parker tell you he wrote detective stories?
Detective stories? No, he didn't.
You didn't come here to find our plot, did you, Mr. Parker?
Yes.
No. I came to find Doris.
Oh, yes, yes, of course.
I was trying to get her, Doris.
At 8, I believe.
That's almost an hour. I was thinking we might all enjoy a little game.
A game?
If we could interest the others.
Certainly, I'll see if I can find them.
They're in the drawing room.
What sort of a game, Mr. Parker?
Mother, will you bring the guests down? We're going to play a game.
Nothing strenuous, is it, Mr. Parker?
More chilling than strenuous, Mr. Bates.
Chili? Oh, goodness.
Ella!
Yes, Mr. Parker?
Could you give me a deck of playing cards?
Playing cards? Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Oh, a card game. I'm particularly fond of bridge.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Bates, but we're not playing bridge.
Oh.
What's this about a game?
I thought we might all enjoy a bit of recreation before dinner.
Oh, yes, yes. When the world is dull and lame, leave it to Vaughn to play the game.
Is this something you worked up, Neil?
It was my idea, if that's what you mean.
Then I'm certain I shan't like it.
Mother, you don't know what the game is. None of us do.
I think this might be an opportune time to play a game of truth.
What makes you say that, Carl?
Here are your cards, Mr. Parker.
Thank you, Ella.
I'm afraid I don't play bridge. Oh, Mr. Parker said it wasn't bridge, Miss Wayne.
No, it's a game called Murder.
Murder?
Murder? I might have known it.
That sounds exciting.
It sounds blood-curdling to me, and exactly the sort of game that Neil would suggest. Well, I refuse to be murdered.
Perhaps we should let Neil explain, Mother.
Here's the idea. I hold in my hand 7 cards. Each of you should draw one, draw one side and scene. The person who draws the ace of spades is to be the murderer.
Oh, dear.
Goodness.
Of course, no one will know who has drawn that card. We'll then turn out all the lights in the house. This will give the murderer the chance to roam a large.
But Neil, when the murderer is expected
To kill someone? No. But he will secretly select a victim, sneak up behind an unlucky man or woman, and draw his finger across the victim's throat, like this.
Oh.
That constitutes a murder. The victim must then fall to the floor. We'll turn on lights, and the detective will question each person in turn and attempt to discover who the guilty party is.
I think I am going to enjoy this.
But who's going to be the detective?
I'll take that part for the first game.
You would? Well, I refuse to play.
Me too. I have a weak heart.
Nonsense. We're all going to take part.
Now, you listen to me. me.
Mother, you should be ashamed. If anyone refuses to play, I'll accuse him or her of having a guilty conscience.
Exactly.
Oh dear, oh dear. Most games are considered a jolly lark, but who wants to be murdered in the dark?
You may draw the first card, Doris. Now, one of you has drawn the ace of spades. The person who holds that card, you understand, is to be the murderer. You may have all the time he wishes to track down his victim.
Oh, I can't stand it.
Each of you may move to any part of the house you wish. I'll wait in the terrace till I hear a scream. This will indicate that a murder's been committed.
Oh, dear.
Ella!
Yes, Miss Parker?
I need you to turn on all the lights in the house.
What?
Do as Mr. Parker says, Ella.
Yes, Miss Doris.
Oh, could you get that table lamp, Doris?
This is preposterous. And if anyone attempts to murder me, I'll...
Oh, then you didn't choose the ace of spades, Mrs. Harwood.
I certainly did not. And if you ask me what I think,
Never mind, Mother.
Does everybody understand?
Yes, we understand.
I understand too much. Could we play a nice quiet game of checkers or something?
It's too late now, Mr. Vaughn.
I'll be on the terrace. Here we go. I'm coming!
somebody turn on the light!
No, give the murderer a chance to escape.
Don't touch me! Don't anybody dare touch me!
Is everybody ready? Turn on the lights.
I'll never play this game again as long as I live. It's a disgrace to the community. It's a disgrace to the state. It's a disgrace to the
Just a
nation.
minute. Did the scream come from this room?
Of course it did, but if you think that that means that... I've never been so frightened in my life. Where is she?
Mrs. Bates, did you hear a scream?
Certainly I did. It was Vicki Wayne. She was in this room. Where is she now?
What a thrilling game.
Oh,
Doris, didn't I make it perfectly clear the victim was to fall at the exact spot the murder took place?
Yes, why?
Vicki Wayne, she was in this room. She disappeared. I mean, she has been murdered. Oh, good heavens. This is just what I expected.
Mother, be quiet.
Well, Mr. Detective, are you ready to question us?
How can he? The body is gone.
What's that?
Miss Wayne was the victim, but she isn't here.
Well, maybe she wasn't murdered in this room.
We're certain the murder took place here in the library.
Where's the body? Where's the body? Miss Wayne! Miss Wayne! Answer me! Dead or alive, answer me!
Well, maybe she didn't understand the rules.
Oh, Mr. Vaughn, have you seen Miss Wayne?
I haven't seen anyone.
Neil, do you think something's happened?
Everything has happened, and it's all your fault, Neil Parker. You're getting it.
Just a minute. Is everyone here with the exception of Vicki Wayne?
Yes.
Then who drew the ace of spades?
I did.
All right, where is Miss Wayne? What have you done with her?
I don't know.
Don't know.
I was hiding in the hall closet. I don't have any cards.
You mean you didn't commit a murder?
No. I was hiding from myself. Then I heard a scream, and I covered my head with someone's raincoat, and I just stayed right
honest.
I'm not so certain about that. We better investigate. Mr. Bates, you search upstairs. Emerson, you take this floor.
Sure.
I'll search the basement. Is this the way?
Yes, I'll show you.
Doris will not leave this room. There's a murderer at large.
Mrs. Harwood?
You see, Miss Wayne?
I can't make it out, ma'am. A young lady's just arrived who says she's Vicky Wayne.
What?
Just arrived.
Which is Mrs. Harwood?
I am.
Mrs. Harwood, I'm Vicky Wayne. I know I'm late.
But you can't be Vicky Wayne.
What do you mean?
She is Vicky Wayne.
Carl,
Hello, Vicky.
you're the last person I expected to find here.
I wonder.
But what about the other Miss Wayne?
Emerson, are you telling the truth? Is this woman Vicky Wayne?
Yes.
Of course I am. What makes you
Miss
think...
Wayne, someone tried to impersonate you tonight. She came here. She claimed that she was Vicky Wayne.
And now she's disappeared in thin air like a soap bubble.
Why? I can't understand it.
Emerson, if you know Miss Wayne, you knew that woman was an imposter. Well, what of it?
Well, I thought something was up, so I kept my mouth shut.
But why should anyone want to impersonate me?
And now she's murdered.
Mother.
What? Murdered.
Miss Wayne, did you intend to come here tonight? Well,
No, that is, I hadn't planned to at first. But something made me change my mind at the last moment.
I see. Evidently, this other woman, whoever she is, knew you weren't coming, so attempted to take your place.
This is terrifying.
Well, then she must have known that neither Mother or I had ever met Miss Wayne.
Yes.
But what does it all mean?
That's just what I'm going to find out. The lights! Notice they don't switch!
Don't sell the mansion, Agnes Harwood. I'm watching you. Yes, Albert Stillwell is watching you.
She's fainted.
Neil,
Oh, it's you. Come in.
where are the others?
Most of them went to bed shortly after dinner.
Oh, what a dinner it was. I have never been so uncomfortable in my life.
Yes, it was a bit unpleasant, wasn't it?
Why did you insist that we go through dinner as though nothing had happened?
I want to see the reactions of the guests.
I believe that's why you suggested we play murder, too.
Yes, I had hoped that whoever had written you that note would try to warn you again in the dark.
Well, your little game was a brilliant success.
I'll admit it didn't turn out quite the way I anticipated.
Well, I should hope not. Is there any sign of the girl?
Miss Wayne's imposter? No. We'll search the house. It's a big place.
Well, then you think she's still here?
It's possible. Doris, you and your mother have innocently stirred up a disagreeable situation. I'm thankful I'm here with you. So, how is your mother?
She's completely unnerved. She refuses to even leave her room.
Well, perhaps that's just as well. She doesn't actually believe that was old Stillwell's voice, does she?
I'm not certain what she believes, but she is frightened, Neil. Horribly frightened.
So what do you know about your great uncle Albert?
Well, not much. Years ago, when Mother was a girl, she and Albert quarreled.
Really? What about?
I don't know. When Mother was a child, her parents died, so Uncle Albert took Mother to raise. He thought the world of her.
And after the quarrel,
She went to the West Coast. That's where she met my father.
did she ever see Albert Stillwell again?
No, I don't think she even heard from him. So you can understand why that voice terrified her.
In other words, she knows absolutely nothing about Albert Stillwell's business in the later years.
No, nothing.
Then it's quite possible.
Neil, be careful.
Come in.
Neil?
What's this?
What is it?
A note.
What does it say?
We'll speak with you alone, 10:30 in library. Signed, Helen Freeland.
Helen Freeland? But who is Helen Freeland?
I don't... That's it.
Neil, what do you mean?
Helen Freeland must be our friend who disappeared tonight.
The girl who posed as Vicky Wayne? But how do you know?
I don't, of course, but it's possible. Does that name mean anything to you, Doris?
Helen Freeland. No.
But perhaps we're beginning to get to the bottom of this.
How much time do you have?
For my appointment? 25 minutes. I have several matters I wish to investigate before then.
What was that?
Oh, it's you. Get on in there.
Mr. Vaughn.
So, Vaughn, we try to leave our pleasant little party.
I can't stay. I have a weak heart. I never spent such a horrible evening in my life.
Mr. Vaughn was trying to sneak out the back door.
Did you come down the back stairs?
I didn't want to disturb anyone.
He almost succeeded, too, until he backed into a table.
I'm not a strong man, Mr. Parker. I'm a nervous man.
Where's Ella?
Upstairs, I guess.
Why did you write me that note?
What note?
The one you slipped under the door.
I didn't write any note. I didn't slip any note under the door. I swear. You gotta believe me. I'm just a poor real estate agent. Did I give you my card?
Never mind. Are you certain you didn't write me a note?
I swear I didn't. I don't know anything about it. You gotta believe me, Mr. Parker.
Did you see anyone as you attempted to leave?
No, sir. Not a soul.
Well, did you hear anything?
No. Wait. Yes. When I came in the room, it was dark, and I heard a noise like someone slipping out another door.
You think he's telling the truth?
Yes. He's too frightened to lie.
Then you'll let me leave, won't you?
No one's leaving here tonight, Vaughn.
But Mr. Parker.
You heard me.
Oh, I don't want to sell this place. Anyway, who would buy a place that was haunted?
You're going back to your room, Vaughn. Miss Harwood and I will escort you.
Mr. Parker.
You heard me.
Oh, I'll never live through the night.
Come on, Bill.
I wish I'd never seen this place.
This way, Mr. Vaughn. Get moving.
What do you think of that, Susan dear?
Oh, but I'm certain Mr. Vaughn is innocent.
Well, hon, of course I'm not speaking of him. I'm talking about the note that young Parker received.
Well, you shouldn't have been listening, John.
And that's what I'm here for. Helen Freeland. Helen Freeland. Why, that name sounds strangely familiar, but I can't quite remember.
John, can't we leave? I'm frightened.
My dear lady, we're not leaving now. My hunch was correct. I think we're on the right track at last.
I don't like it, John. I never have.
Undoubtedly, someone knows or suspects what I do. We have got to work fast.
Oh, I hate this sort of thing.
Well, you won't after I'm successful.
Why don't you get a job?
Now, I have a job. Now,
Do you think I'm proud of a husband who would sneak around a house and
what have I done that isn't entirely respectable?
well, but if necessary, well, you'd
Susan!
Oh,
Oh, Miss Wayne.
Gone to bed. Oh, it's a frightful situation, isn't it?
Yes, I want to get out of
Susan.
here.
So do I, but I can't leave until I know more about that other girl.
Yes. Who would want to impersonate you, Miss Wayne?
I can't imagine. I suppose it's silly, but I'm afraid.
Well, nothing to be alarmed about. Undoubtedly just some young lady that wanted to spend a pleasant weekend in your place.
But how did she discover I hadn't planned to accept this invitation? And how did she know I'd never met Mrs. Harwood and her daughter?
Yes, it's really strange.
And now she's disappeared. If I could see her just once.
Oh, by the way, Miss Wayne, how would you like the game of bridge?
No thanks.
But Mr. Emerson said that he would play if we could round up a fourth.
Carl, Mr. Emerson said that?
Yes, he'll be down shortly.
Why, yes, I believe I would enjoy a rubber bridge.
Me too. Anything to take my mind off of what has happened.
Why don't we go on into the drawing room? I saw a table in there.
Very well.
John always criticizes my bidding, Miss Wayne, but he really doesn't mean all those things he says.
Of course not, Susan dear. Why, I find you the sweetest, most understanding wife that a man could desire.
That's ugly.
You! Again!
Oh, hello, Ella.
What are you doing around here this time of night?
Oh, nothing. Nothing at all.
Did you come in through the back entrance?
I guess so.
I told you to stay out of this part of the house. Anyway, this is not the time to come calling on a girl.
And what makes you think I'm calling on you?
Well, that's all you've been doing since I came here to work.
You seem to forget. I wake you too.
Not at night, you don't. If Mrs. Howard wasn't sick, I'd report you.
Mrs. Harwood? Sick?
Yes.
What's the matter with the old hen?
Benny! Benny,
Well?
strange things have been happening around here. I don't like it.
Well, I told you this was a dangerous place, didn't I?
A young girl showed up who said she was Vicky Wayne, but she wasn't.
What do you mean?
Well, Mrs. Howard's guest played a game called Murder. They turned out all the lights, and then this girl disappeared. And it wasn't 5 minutes later until the real Vicky Wayne walked down the scene.
Well, that's funny.
It isn't funny if you ask me. But that's not all.
Oh?
The lights went out again. But nobody was near the switch. And while everything was dark, a voice told Mrs. Howard not to sell this mansion.
A voice?
A man's voice. And he said he was Albert Stillwell.
Well, I told you not to wake you, didn't I?
It sort of got on my nerves just thinking about it.
Oh, well, are you ready to get out of here and marry me?
No, I'm not! I told you I'd cut out to be a critter girl, and I'm going to stick to it!
And get murdered by a ghost, I suppose.
Benny, I don't believe in ghosts.
You're a fine one. I don't even know why I'm trying to protect you.
I don't need protecting.
Oh, yeah? Listen to me, Ella Tucker. You'll be running to me to protect you before this whole thing is over.
I would run to you if you were the last man on earth.
You make me so mad.
Isn't that a shame?
At times, I don't even know why I want to get married to you.
Because I'm a lady, and no lady ever looked twice at you before.
Oh, yeah? Is that so? Well, listen to me, Ella Tucker. I know a thing or two.
If you do, you sure do keep your head well.
You make me so mad.
Oh, Mr. Parker, this is, Mr. King, Ben King.
Hello. You're not one of Mrs. Harwood's guests, are you?
No, I just...
Benny's just a friend of mine. Or was. He's just leaving, Mr. Parker. Come on, Benny.
Well, it was nice meeting you, Mr. Parker. Hey, maybe I'll see you again sometime. What do you mean, or what?
Good evening.
Good evening.
I didn't know you were still down here.
Mr. and Mrs. Bates wanted me to play a rubber bridge with them, but I've changed my mind.
Yes, it is rather late, isn't it?
Yes, good night.
But not too late for us to have a little talk, is it?
Talk?
I'd like to ask you a few questions.
What questions?
Miss Wayne, why are you here?
What do you mean?
You're not interested in buying this estate, are you?
No, but I refuse to tell you anything else.
Just one more question. It's nothing personal, I assure you.
Yes?
Do you know anyone by the name of Helen Freeland?
Helen Freeland? What about her?
Is she a friend of yours?
She is my father's secretary.
Indeed.
Why do you ask? Do you know something about her, Mr. Parker?
Yes, I do know something about her.
What are you trying to tell me?
I'm not trying to tell you anything at the moment.
But I have a right to know.
Oh, there you are, Miss Wayne.
And Mr. Parker, too. Good. Now we can have that bridge game.
I don't care to play.
Oh, but the four of us
I'm sorry, Mrs. Bates. I'll see you in the morning, Mr. Parker. We haven't finished our conversation, you know. Good night.
Miss Wayne seems quite perturbed.
Yeah, and I did so want a game.
After all, it is rather late.
Yes, it's time we were all up in bed.
Exactly.
Any trace of that woman that disappeared?
No.
Have you found out where the voice came from yet, Mr. Parker?
Frankly, I haven't.
That really upset poor Mrs. Harwood.
It upset us all.
Yes, it did.
Susan, I think perhaps we'd better be going upstairs. Are you coming, Mr. Parker?
Not just yet.
But it is rather late, you know.
Oh, Agnes, my dear.
Mrs. Harwood, it's good to see you up again.
It's time I was up.
Oh, would you like to play a game of bridge?
I would not.
Well, I can't blame you, my dear lady. Come, Susan.
Good night, Agnes.
Good night.
Mrs. Harwood, you shouldn't be down here.
Are you trying to get rid of me?
Certainly not, but I...
Oh, yes, you are. You thought you could frighten me to death, didn't you? Well, for your information, I faint easier than I die. You thought up that game of murder for my benefit, didn't you? And you tried to make me think that was Uncle Albert speaking in the dark. Well, for your information, that wasn't Uncle Albert's voice.
No?
No, and I don't believe in ghosts, so you might as well pack up your little bag of tricks and get out.
Mrs. Harwood, you don't understand.
I understand that you're in love with my daughter, and you'd be just delighted to have me out of the way, wouldn't you?
I would, I assure you, but I'm beginning to think that someone has that in mind.
What?
I'm not all certain you're safe in this house.
I was safe until you came, Neil Parker. I don't know why my daughter had to take up with a man who writes detective stories. The world is full of nice, quiet farmers and clerks and merchants and plumbers. But no, Doris had to fall for a man who murders for a living.
Come now, Mrs. Howard, I'm not as bad as all that.
Oh, yes, you are. I read one of your stories once.
Really?
Only one, mind you. And the next day I was positively ill. Doris tried to blame it on the crab meat salad and ice cream I'd had the night before. I knew better. Why would a little crab meat and ice cream make me ill? Oh, no, it was that story of yours, all about screams in the night and kidnapping on every other page.
Mrs. Howard, sit down.
Why,
I said sit down.
Just trying to tell me what
Sit
to do.
down.
What makes you think you can dictate to me?
For present, I'm taking charge around here.
A fine way for a guest to talk, and an unwelcome one at that.
How can I stress upon you the seriousness of your situation?
Are you trying to threaten me? I may be a weak, defenseless woman, but I still have my power of speech.
Yes, Mrs. Harwood, you do. I want you to keep it. That's why I must ask you a question.
And the answer is no. I refuse to accept you as a son-in-law.
Mrs. Harwood, this has nothing to do with Doris and me.
Well?
Why did you and Albert Stillwell quarrel?
Quarrel? How did you know that?
Doris told me.
She would. And I suppose she also told you that I had measles at the age of 6, and that I had been arrested twice for exceeding the speed limit.
I hardly think that that's important in this situation.
And what makes you think my quarrel with Uncle Albert is important?
Didn't someone try to impersonate him tonight?
Neil, do you honestly mean to tell me that wasn't your voice?
On my word of honor, it wasn't. Which is why it's so important I have all the information possible.
Well, I still don't understand what my quarrel with Uncle Albert should have to do with anything.
He was always good to you.
Yes. After my parents died, he took me to raise. He treated me like his own daughter. But then he attempted to plan my future, and I rebelled. Why, even as a child, I resented having people tell me what to do.
Yes, I suppose so.
He wanted me to teach school. Can you imagine that?
Frankly, no.
He wanted me to teach English. Why, it was positively silly. Everyone knows English already. Not only that, but he wanted me to read Dickens.
Indeed.
He bought me a complete set of Dickens works.
Those?
Yes,
Did you read them?
but I should say not. I told Uncle Albert I wasn't cut out to be a bookworm. Oh, we had some bitter words. He didn't seem to realize that I was the butterfly type.
No, I don't suppose he did.
So I packed my bags and I flitted out to the West Coast, where I didn't have to read anything. Poor Uncle Albert. He never quite got over it.
You never saw him again?
No. After I wrote him that I captured a husband, he didn't even answer. But I don't know why I'm telling you all this.
I'm glad you did.
I had made up my mind. I wouldn't even speak to you. But once I get started, I can't seem to stop. It's most annoying at times.
Yes, I know.
Neil, I still don't understand what my quarrel with Uncle Albert should have to do with that ghastly voice in the dark.
Well, I'm not certain it does, but perhaps we'll know more before the evening's over.
Why do you say that?
Supposing you go to your room now, Mrs. Harwood.
Well, I'm not at all sleepy
You've had quite a shock. You need your rest.
I don't feel like resting.
You will when you reach your room.
Don't think you can drug me, young man.
Of course not, but we must consider your safety.
Well, that's just what I am considering. And frankly, I'd rather you were in China and I were on a desert island.
Hello, chair. Ow.
What are you doing?
Oh, it's you. Come in.
Are you interested in old books?
No, someone around here is.
Neil, I don't understand.
Neither do I. I just found several old books on the floor.
Have you been out of the room?
Yes.
Where were you?
With your mother?
With my mother? You mean my mother asked to see you?
No, but we had a delightful little chat here in the library.
She was downstairs?
Yeah, I just got back from taking her to her room.
What did she tell you?
Nothing that seems to throw any light in the situation. At least not at present.
I can imagine that it was an unpleasant interview.
Not entirely. Although she does seem to think I'm responsible for Alfred Stillwell's voice. She even thinks I'm trying to do away with it.
Mother's always been certain that you would.
What are you doing?
It's 10:30. I'm waiting for Helen Freeland.
But darling, she wants to see me alone.
I'm sorry, Neil, but she's going to see both of us.
What loyalty? The sweetest girl in the world insists on protecting the man she loves.
Neil, this is no time for joking.
I realize that, perhaps better than you do, which is all the more reason you should just let me handle this.
But Neil, you know nothing about this girl. Suppose she's a criminal or something.
She isn't, I assure you.
And what makes you so certain?
I spoke with Miss Wayne.
What does Miss Wayne have to do with this?
My dear girl, I think before this is over, you'll find out that several people are involved.
Neil, you know more than you're telling me.
I only suspect more, that's all, darling.
Miss Freeland?
Yes, Helen Freeland.
Come in.
I had expected to speak with you alone, Mr. Parker.
I'm sorry, but I insist on staying.
Well, perhaps it's better this way.
Will you sit down?
No, thank you.
You wrote me this?
Yes, I did.
You have much to explain, Miss Freeland. Where have you been since you disappeared?
I've been hiding here in the house.
It must have been quite a shock to you when the real Miss Wayne arrived.
Yes, I hadn't expected that.
But you disappeared before Vicki Wayne showed up.
That was because of a mistake.
Mistake.
And the added fact that Carl Emerson knew that I wasn't the real Vicki Wayne. But that's not what I want to tell you.
You want to tell us that you're the secretary to Vicki Wayne's father?
What, Neil? How did you know?
I spoke with Miss Wayne.
You didn't tell her I was here, did you?
No.
Miss Wayne was in her father's office one day last week. She mentioned that she had been invited here but expected to decline the invitation. She said that she'd never met either you or your mother.
So you decided to take her place?
Yes, but I hadn't planned on Carl Emerson being here.
Is he a friend of yours?
Not exactly. But I was relieved when you suggested the game of murder.
So you can make your escape.
Oh no, that was the last thing that I wanted to do.
But that doesn't make sense.
Doris, let Miss Friendly explain.
When the lights went out, someone seized me in the dark.
Who?
I promised not to tell. It was an error, but a fortunate one for me.
Miss Freeland, why are you here?
To keep your mother from selling this estate, as I explained in my letter to you.
Letter to me? You mean the one that came by special delivery tonight?
So you wrote that?
But why did you sign Albert Stillwell's name to it?
I am looking after the late Albert Stillwell's interests as I promised him I would.
What's that?
For 6 years, until the day of Albert Stillwell's death, I was his private secretary.
What?
He was a remarkable man, Miss Harwood. It's a pity that you couldn't have known him. He treated me like a member of his own family. And about 2 years before he died, he gave me a remarkably fine diamond.
But Uncle Albert wasn't a wealthy man. After the estate was settled, just the house was left.
And he wanted your mother to keep it. He said to me, I have but one request to make of you. That if my niece should attempt to sell this estate, that you should keep her from doing so until she has first made a discovery.
A discovery? I don't understand.
Neither do I. But I promise to keep track of things here. Albert Stillwell was good to me. It's the least that I can do for him.
I see.
When Miss Wayne explained how anxious your mother was to sell the estate, I knew that I must somehow contact you, because Miss Wayne also explained how easily upset your mother was. That's why I wrote you that letter and signed Albert Stillwell's name to it.
I think I'm beginning to understand.
Did Uncle Albert tell you anything else?
No, nothing. That's why this all sounds so fantastic.
Where have you been since we played the game?
I shan't explain that now.
Then you're not telling us everything.
I'm telling you everything that concerns you and your mother.
After you disappeared, a voice somewhere in this room warned Mother not to sell the estate. Do you know anything about that?
I refuse to answer.
Then I refuse to accept anything you told us.
You must believe me, Miss Harwood. I was Albert Stillwell's secretary, and I did promise him that I would keep your mother from selling this estate.
You said someone seized you in darkness by mistake. I demand to know who it was and where you have been.
Very well. I suppose I shall have to tell you. The lights!
Doris, where are you?
I'm right here. Miss Freeland, where are you?
Miss Freeland! Miss Freeland!
This is Albert Stillwell.
Who's that speaking?
Neil, by the archway. There's someone there.
If anybody moves, I got
Neil, be careful.
Ow!
Oh.
Doris, what have you done?
Well, I hit him with the bookend.
My word.
Oh, it's Carl Emerson, but where's Miss Freeland?
Just Carl Emerson.
Oh, Neil? Neil, do people die from bookends?
Don't shoot!
Why, Mr. Vaughn?
Oh, it's you!
Who did you think it was? The spirit of Christmas past?
Don't spirits to me.
Where are you going?
I'm getting out of here. No place is big enough to hold me and a pack of ghosts.
So do you really think this mansion is haunted?
I'm not sticking around to find out. Voices in the dark, lights going out, people disappearing.
Do you suppose that voice really belonged to Albert Stillwell?
I don't know. But it warned Mrs. Harwood not to sell this place, and I was never one to argue with voices in the dark.
It spoke again last night after everybody was in bed.
I heard it. It said, "This is Albert Stillwell," and then I passed out.
There were other voices down here, too.
What happened?
You don't think I came down to investigate, do you?
Oh, I wish I never met Mrs. Harwood. I don't mind selling farms and cozy little cottages, but I'm not going to be a real estate agent for a convention of spooks.
Benny warned me about this place, but I wouldn't listen to him.
Who's Benny?
My boyfriend, he wanted me to give up my career and marry him.
Are you going to do it?
Well, I'm going to give up my career.
Then you're leaving too?
I thought nothing was as important as my job, but what good is a job if you're dead?
Oh. And I have a weak heart. It's getting weaker by the minute. It'll take me years to get over this.
Maybe we can leave together. My bags are in the kitchen.
You think anyone will try and stop us?
I don't know, but I'm not telling a soul. Are they all asleep?
I think so.
Then we better get moving.
Yeah, while we still can move.
Follow me, Mr. Vaughn.
you two think you're going?
We were just going out to get a bit of fresh air.
Yes, a long breath while we can still enjoy it.
I know better. You were trying to escape.
But Mrs. Hart, this place is haunted.
And I have a weak heart. Fun is good, fun is brave, but spooks send good men to the grave.
No one is leaving this house.
But Mrs. Harwood.
You are all to stay put until I've called the police.
The police?
Turn back here, Mr. Vaughn.
But I don't want to be a career girl.
Sit down, both of you. I'm taking charge around here. And it's about time. This is my house, isn't it?
Yes, I wouldn't have it as a gift. The Von Rapid Move Realty Company refuses to deal with ghosts.
I have been ignored and pushed around like last year's dress in a bargain basement. And I've had enough of it. Everybody knows more than I do. And I won't stand for it anymore.
But I don't know anything, Mrs. Harwood. I never did.
And I know even less.
We'll let the police decide that. And I'm going to enjoy watching them arrest the guilty party.
But you can't arrest ghosts. It isn't legal.
Neil Parker is no ghost.
Mr. Parker?
He's as guilty as a cat perched on the edge of an empty fishbowl. And he may not be the only one.
But he's a nice man. He writes detective stories.
And he can write them behind bars.
Good morning.
Miss Lane, aren't you up early?
Yes, I'm sorry, but I must leave at once.
What gave you that idea?
I just remembered I have an appointment in the city this morning.
Then you can consider that appointment broken. No one is leaving until I've called the police.
But Mrs. Harwood...
You're all to stay put. I am having these strange goings-on investigated, and I want everyone here.
I can't blame you, of course, but I'm...
If anyone attempts to leave, I will demand their arrest for trespassing.
Oh, very well, I suppose I shall have to stay.
You certainly shall. Ella, prepare breakfast for us at once. As soon as everyone has arrived, I will notify the authorities.
Yes, ma'am.
Come on, Mr. Vaughn, we might as well wait in the driveway.
I'd rather wait at home. I always was a homebody.
You'll not step off this place, Mr. Vaughn.
My courage is low. My heart is torn. I ask myself, why was I born?
I was just beginning to wonder that myself, Mr. Vaughn.
Mother, I've been looking for you.
I've been right here for days.
Are the others down yet?
Some of them are down, and they'd like to be out. And you're responsible for all this, Doris Harwood.
What makes you say that?
If you hadn't been in love with Neil Parker, he wouldn't be here. And if he weren't here, all would be quiet and peaceful.
You don't honestly think he's responsible for what's happened, do you?
I certainly do. And as soon as the police arrive, they'll prove it.
Oh, Mother, you haven't notified the police, have you?
Well, not yet. But as soon as everyone has assembled, I'm going to.
Oh, but Mother, you can't.
This is my estate, isn't it?
Yes?
Tell Neil I want to see him at once.
I can't. He's not here.
What?
He left early this morning. I don't know where he's gone.
So, proves beyond a doubt that he is the guilty party. I knew it from the first.
Oh, Mother.
Trying to frighten me to death, is he? His one ambition in life is to marry... Mr. Emerson, what's the matter with you?
Good morning, Doris.
Good morning, Carl.
Mr. Emerson, are you injured?
Slightly.
Good heavens, has something hit you? You were all right last night.
Was I? I don't seem to remember much.
I do.
Doris, what are you talking about? Has something else happened? Mr. Emerson, I demand to know what's going on around here.
Why don't you ask Doris? She seems to be better informed than I.
That settles it. Everyone knows more than I. I'm calling the police.
No, you're not, Mrs. Harwood.
Well, it's about time you showed up, you animated torture chamber.
Hello, Emerson. Glad to see you're up.
It's a miracle I'm alive.
Neil Parker, where have you been?
Oh, let's just say I've been admiring your garden.
I haven't a garden. And what
statue gets a lot of attention.
Well, Carl,
You the one that hit me last night?
I was, but evidently not quite hard enough.
Just a minute, Doris.
What happened to Helen Freeland?
I don't know anything about her.
A likely story. The lights went out. Someone seized her and found you in the room.
Found me? Found me? You almost murdered me.
Doris and I carried you upstairs last night, Emerson. And quite a task it was. We patched up your head, put you to bed, and hoped for the best. Sam started to sound like Mr. Vaughn.
You better explain, Carl Emerson.
What would you say if I said someone was in this room the same time we were?
I wouldn't believe you.
Neil, have you found any trace of the girl?
No. It's the only thing that bothers me. If we could just find her.
Why don't you ask Carl?
He doesn't know anything about it, Doris.
I'm glad someone believes me.
Carl? Carl, what happened? Oh, darling!
I'm all right, Vicky.
But you're hurt.
Well, would someone kindly explain?
An excellent idea.
I guess we have a lot of explaining to do, huh, Vicky?
I was certain you two were in love and that you had a quarrel.
How did you know?
Your actions towards each other were a little louder than words.
Vicky and I met at college. It was love at first sight, I guess. I didn't have much money, and Vicky too made me believe she was a poor, struggling student.
I was afraid to tell you the truth, Carl. I didn't want to lose you.
I always dreamed of owning a summer hotel. Maybe that sounds like crazy ambition, but Vicky seemed to like it. At least she made me think she did.
I was truthful about that, Carl.
Anyway, when I found out she was the daughter of wealthy parents, I decided she'd been playing me for a fool, listening to my crazy plans and laughing behind my back.
No, Carl, I didn't laugh.
Anyway, I walked out on her. I figured if I was ever to make Vicky respect me, I'd have to do something more than run a summer hotel. So I came to the city and I got involved in the stock and bond business.
And you didn't even let me know you were living here.
I wanted to be a big business success before I saw you again, Vicky. So when I met Mrs. Harwood, I did everything in my power to gain her confidence. I thought maybe she'd invest some of her money in the stocks and bonds I was peddling. That's why I accepted this weekend invitation.
Carl, Mother hasn't any money. After the estate was settled, just the house was left.
I know. I began to suspect that last night. You're not exactly living like millionaires, you know.
And what about you, Miss Wayne?
There's not much more to say. Except that after Carl left me, I was terribly crushed. I didn't know where he'd gone. I had expected to refuse Mrs. Harwood's invitation until I picked up the paper yesterday morning. I read that Carl Emerson would be out here too. I had to see him, so I changed my plans at the last moment. Carl, don't you realize I've always loved you?
You couldn't be sure, Vicky. I mean, how could a wealthy girl love a punk who dreamed of owning summer hotels? To me, the stock and bond business...
Stocks and bonds? What do I care about such things?
You mean you actually like my goofy plans?
Love them.
Vicky.
You're going to chuck that job of yours the first thing Monday morning. We're going into the summer hotel business, you and I.
But what about your parents?
Are you marrying my parents or me?
I have enough money.
Then we'll start with a 3-room shack. We'll live in one room and rent the others.
Vicky, you're a darling.
And that seems to be that.
I hate to interrupt this reunion, Carl, but I'd still like to know what you were doing here in the library.
You mean when you tried to murder me?
Did you strike Carl, Miss Harwood?
Yeah, I did. In the dark, with the book in it. I thought he was kidnapping Helen Freeland.
Helen Freeland?
Helen Freeland is the woman who tried to impersonate you, Miss Wayne.
But she is my father's secretary.
So you said.
Of course, I told her I hadn't planned to come out here. Why, the little cat!
Now,
What
Miss
did she
Freeland,
do?
an excellent excuse for trying to impersonate you. You mustn't hold it against her.
She was in the room last night with Mr. Parker and Doris. I was out in the hall, the lights went out. Helen Freeland vanished, and Doris thought I was guilty.
I'd still like to know what you were doing here in the dark.
I had a hunch about something.
Supposing you tell us, Emerson.
Okay, I had to do that voice.
Oh,
I got
good morning.
We're not late for breakfast, are we?
Any trace of that young lady that poses Miss Wayne?
No.
Strange how she disappeared while we were playing that game last night.
Oh, but after that, Neil...
Is that what you were saying, Miss Howard?
Nothing at all, Mr. Bates, nothing.
Undoubtedly, she disappeared after she realized the real Miss Wayne had arrived.
And you don't think she'll return?
I rather doubt it.
Have you figured out where that voice came from yet, Mr. Parker?
Not yet.
This is such a strain on poor Agnes.
Yes, how is your mother this morning, Doris?
She's better, thank you.
And as lively as ever, I might add.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. Oh. What a frightful weekend this has been. Oh, I don't mean that as a criticism to your hospitality, my dear, but really.
I understand, Mrs. Bates.
I think it's been a wonderful weekend.
So do I.
I can't imagine why anyone would say that.
Well, perhaps you wouldn't, Mrs. Bates, but with Vicki and I, it's different.
Is there something that we don't know about?
You'd be surprised at what I do know, Mr. Bates.
How interesting.
Mr. Emerson, what's the matter with your head?
Just a slight accident.
I'll be all right.
Well, heavens, give us the details.
By all means.
I think someone else can give a more vivid account than I.
Oh, Mr. Bond.
Hello.
Good morning.
Did you sleep well?
I doubt if I'll ever sleep again. I want to go home.
Come, Mr. Bond. That's no way to act.
Don't you want to go home?
Well, on the contrary, I'm most anxious to stay.
Yes. John said nothing can make him leave now, but I...
It's the same. I'd rather be at home. Some men to distant countries roam, but Vaughn would rather stay at home.
You'll be all right, Mr. Bond.
But your mother threatened to call the police.
Oh, the police.
She won't do that. Unless it's necessary.
Unless it's necessary.
She wants to find out what's going on around here. I just want to find out how to leave.
I don't think there's any reason to call the police.
Really?
Oh, I'm going to go have a chat with Agnes. She mustn't be left alone this way.
I'll go with you, Susan, dear.
Mother isn't upstairs.
No?
No.
Oh, dear, she hasn't disappeared, has she? Like Helen Freeland?
How'd you know that name?
But oh, dear.
We saw her last night after we played the game of murder.
Why don't somebody explain these
But she
things?
disappeared again the second time against her will.
How distressing. Why didn't you tell us about that before, Mr. Parker?
Was that really necessary, Mr. Bates? Someone in this room knows where she is.
It's all right, Mr. Parker. I'm safe.
That was Helen Freeland.
Yes.
Where is she?
Your hunch was correct.
What hunch?
Carl?
Breakfast is ready.
Miss Freeland! Miss Freeland, where are you?
Neil, what on earth is the matter with you?
That was Helen Freeland's voice. I'm certain of it.
Voice? Voice, what are you talking about?
I want to go home.
Carl, I don't understand.
Carl, he's lost his mind.
So have I.
What's around here?
Mr. Emerson, pictures are made to look at.
Emerson, do you think...
I'm sure of it.
It's another game.
I don't want to play games. I want to go home.
Look behind the portrait.
Of course, that's it. Here it is.
Opening in the wall.
An old stovepipe opening into a chimney.
Well, that must be where the voices came from.
You mean someone's been talking up the chimney?
Exactly, from the basement.
Emerson, you're a bright lad.
Why didn't somebody discover that before? I have a weak heart. I can't stand these starts.
Neil?
What's the matter?
Mr. and Mrs. Bates. They're not here.
And I wish I wasn't.
But they were in this room a moment ago.
Vicki, did you see them leave?
No, I was watching Carl.
We all were. Neil, suppose they get away.
That's all right. Well, let them go.
Wait a minute. What are you talking about? I don't follow you.
Hello.
Benny? Why, Mr. King, what are you doing up here? You know perfectly well I had company.
I told Benny time and time again he was to stay in the basement, ma'am.
In the basement?
Mr. King works for me.
So you're the one, Mr. King.
Yep. I'm the voice of,
Albert Stillwell.
Benny, you mean that voice was yours?
Well, yeah, you see, I discovered that old stovepipe hole last week when I was fixing the house. It hasn't been used for years. It isn't even hooked up to the central heating system, so I could yell through it, and you can hear my voice up here as plain as anything.
I'll say we could.
Why, Mr. King, how dare you play such a disgusting trick?
Oh,
I'm
Benny,
going to fire you.
scare you, Ella.
Scare me?
Well, yeah, I figured if I could scare you, you'd be willing to chuck your job and marry me.
Why, Benny King.
And you turned out the lights.
Yeah, from the central switch in the basement, it sort of made my voice sound spooky.
Yeah, I suspected that from the first.
You certainly acted like it, Mr. Vaughn.
But, Mr. King, was Helen Freeland in the basement with you?
Yeah, and she sort of upset my plans.
Is she still in the basement?
She'll be up in a minute. You see, when you played that game Murder last night, I was in the kitchen waiting to see Ella here, and when the lights went out, I figured it was a good time to scare that girlfriend of mine.
Why, Benny King, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
So I snuck in here and I grabbed a female, only it was the wrong one.
So you grabbed Helen Freeland.
When I discovered my mistake, imagine my embarrassment. But I didn't want to spill the beans, so I forced her into the basement. And when I got her down there, I explained things to her, and then she didn't want to leave me. She even gave me the idea of using old Albert Stillwell's name.
See, I get Benny King carrying out with another girl. I'll bet you knew it was me from the first.
Now, Ella, honey, I did not.
You did too. My lips are for me to think.
Ow! Ella!
You don't even want to marry me.
Ella, listen to me.
I'll never listen to another man as long as I live.
Ella!
Casualties mount up.
Good morning. Good heavens, what is this? The Stillwell Hospital?
So you've been hiding in my basement, have you?
I owe you an explanation, Miss Wayne.
You owe everybody an explanation.
Mrs. Harwood, this is Helen Freeland.
You told me you were Vicky Wayne.
She isn't. She is my father's secretary.
And for many years, Mrs. Harwood, she was Albert Stillwell's secretary.
What? How do you know, Mr. Parker?
Doris and I had a talk with Miss Freeland last night.
He's right, Miss Wayne. We met here in the library. I had been down in the basement with Mr. King.
Yes, Benny told us.
It was Mr. King who turned out the lights that time. He was afraid I was going to explain about his activities. Of course, he could hear us through the chimney.
Yeah, that's what I suspected.
And when the lights went out that time, someone seized me and thrust a note into my hand.
And all this time I was upstairs? Doesn't anybody realize I own this place?
I had this all worked out from the first.
I suppose that's why you wanted to go home, Mr. Vaughn.
Anyway, the note said that I should leave at once. Instead, I went back downstairs. Vinny had gone by that time, so I remained there, alone, all night.
Yeah, you hear that? Ella? Ella!
Who threatened you? Why did you come here, Miss Freeland?
I promised Albert Stillwell that I would keep Mrs. Harwood from selling this estate until she had discovered something.
Discovered something? What was it?
I don't know.
I do.
Neil?
John Bates wrote that note to you, Miss Freeland.
Mr. Bates?
Are you certain?
Yes, you pulled a button from his jacket last night. I found it later in the hall.
How do you know it belonged to him?
It was missing from his coat this morning.
I thought you weren't here this morning.
He was up and dressed before I left.
Exactly. That proved I wasn't guilty, didn't it?
Yes, and it also proved that he knew something about this house and wanted Miss Freeland out of the way.
That's just the way I had it worked out.
Last night, Susan Bates told me that her husband had worked in the Avenue jewelry shop. And Helen Freeland told me that Albert Stillwell had once given her an expensive diamond.
Diamond?
Those two things gave me an idea. This morning I went to town. It was there I confirmed my suspicions. John Bates had been the assistant manager of the Avenue jewelry shop. While I was employed there, the company had sold Albert Stillwell many valuable diamonds.
Neil.
Evidently, he guessed you knew nothing about it, Mrs. Harwood. He must have thought that Albert Stillwell had hidden those diamonds. Probably someplace in this house.
Oh, then that's what Mr. Stillwell must have meant when he said you weren't to sell the mansion. Why, Mr. Bates knew more about this than I did.
Yes, and he was undoubtedly eavesdropping on our conversation last night and waiting in the hall for an opportunity to give you that note.
Oh, and when Vinny turned out the lights...
Exactly.
But maybe he's discovered the diamonds and we're letting him get away.
No, he told me this morning that he was anxious to stay over the weekend. He thought that with Miss Freeland out of the way, there'd be nothing to stop him from searching the house. Then he heard her voice.
And beat a hasty retreat.
But does that mean that there are still diamonds hidden in this house?
I have every reason to believe it.
Imagine. Diamonds. But where are the diamonds? Everybody look. We'll play a game.
Not murder, we won't.
But why wouldn't Uncle Albert leave the diamonds to Mother publicly instead
Stillwell quarreled over?
Oh, he wanted me to be a teacher. He wanted me to read Dickens.
Dickens, that's it.
Well, Neil, do you think he...
What on earth are you doing?
Reading Dickens.
You can't hide diamonds in books.
I can read that fast. Heavens, mice.
There is something inside.
A diamond.
A compartment filled with them.
Oh, my goodness.
That looks like just another old volume.
Yes, Albert Stillwell cut a hole out of the center of this book and put the diamonds inside. No one ever would have discovered them unless the book was opened.
Look, there are dozens of them.
Albert Stillwell wanted you to read Dickens, Mrs. Harwood. He knew that if you ever did, you'd find those diamonds.
And to think, that's one of the books I was kicking around last night.
Mrs. Harwood, it happened.
I should say it did.
I mean, I'm going to have a new career.
Yeah, Ellis made me the happiest man in the world.
And dear Uncle Albert has made me the happiest man in the world, too.
We're going to be married tomorrow.
I've sure gained a jewel, Mrs. Harwood.
That's nothing. I've gained dozens of them.
I hope you're not disappointed.
Disappointed? I've never been so elated in my life.
But Mrs. Harwood!
Ella, Mother's speaking of something else. She's just had a wonderful surprise.
Yeah, so have I. I didn't think I'd get Ella here after what happened.
But if I ever catch you kidnapping females
Ow!
again, you big elf, I'll chew you to pieces. Come on, Ducky.
Yes, Duffy.
Well, we know it's been with the parents in that family.
I heard that, Parker.
I'm certainly glad I didn't break up that romance. I'm afraid I've given everyone a frightful weekend. Can you ever forgive me?
Of course I will, and I can't wait to tell Father what you've done. He'll be so proud to have such a loyal secretary.
What about his son-in-law?
What do we care? We'll have a summer hotel.
You mean you and Mr. Emerson are going to be...
As soon as I get a marriage license?
Marriage? Marriage? Who said that?
I did, Mrs. Harwood. Vicky's considered to be my wife.
Goodness, is that what a weekend in my home does to people?
Carl's going to give up his stock and bond business the first thing Monday morning.
Oh, you can't do that. Not yet.
Why not?
Oh, you've got to turn these diamonds into bonds for me.
You really mean it, Mrs. Harwood?
Well, you don't think I want to sit around and gaze at them the rest of my life, do you?
Well, with commission off a sale like that, we can make a cozy down payment on a swanky hotel.
And this mansion is just the place for you, Mr. Emerson.
We'll buy this estate, and your commission should be enough for a down payment.
Oh, thank goodness that's settled.
You just leave all the details to me. For business deals and marriage hopes, leave it to Vaughn. He knows the ropes. Here, have a card.
I still can't get over it. It's like having your cake and eating it too.
Well, remember, Mother, you have Neil to thank for this. He solved the mystery.
Oh, yes, I guess he did. Goodness, maybe we better keep him.
It's a deal.